Welcome, everybody. My name is Lorna Gilmore, and this presentation is to give parents more information regarding the transition from 5th grade to middle school in the Issaquah School District. With me today, I have two people assisting me, and they are Susan McDonald, who is a science teacher at Pacific Cascade Middle School, and Susie Yamane, the assistant to the executive director of Equity and Family Partnership, which is the department that I work at. Just a reminder that this presentation is being recorded. So if you do not want your image on the recording, I would recommend that you turn off your camera and also mute yourself. I will be monitoring the chat, so make sure you, if you have any questions, please enter your questions in the chat or wait till the end of the session when we're done with the main presentation, and I will answer questions at the end of the session. So the purpose of tonight's event is to help families that are new to the United States school system better understand schools in Issaquah and schools in the US. So if you are familiar with the data from the city, you will note that in the city of Issaquah, we have approximately 26% of our population in Issaquah, along with Sammamish, Mercer Island, Newcastle areas that are foreign born. And so the reason why we make sure and we do this presentation is, in our experience, we have noticed that many of the families who did not grow up or attend school in the school system were unfamiliar with the school system, how it functioned, the procedures, some of the policies, and just general information on how things functioned in the school district. Some people did not understand what a school district was, what a school board was, a lot of different aspects. And so that ended up becoming sometimes a barrier to really supporting their child succeed in schools, understanding, course selection in middle school and high school, and what that means for extracurricular activities and how that impacts graduation, placement in colleges and so forth. So we are really trying to make sure that we are eliminating any barriers for families as they move through the school system. And we want to make sure we are providing all the supports we can to families so they can best support their child as they go through the school system. And this presentation is mainly about Issaquah School District middle schools. The Issaquah School District has changed tremendously. I started working as a middle school teacher in 2001 at Issaquah Middle, and since I started till now, our district has become more and more culturally and linguistically diverse. So when I first started, we had about 60% families that would identify themselves as families of color, and now we're nearly at 50%. Okay, and so as I said, my department, I am part of the family partnership team, and with me I have 3 liaisons that I support and supervise, and they are Ina Gangurdi, Liliana Medina, and Wenli Mittal. Now, these liaisons are based out of their schools, specific schools. Ina works at Cougar Mountain and Maywood, Liliana in Issaquah Middle and Pacific Cascade, and Wenli is at Pine Lake and Beaver Lake. And if you have additional questions, please feel free to reach out to them and they can meet with you and answer your questions more in greater detail.
Lorna,
yes.
You do not have your PowerPoint.
Okay,
up. Sorry. You.
Thank you so much, Susie. So you can see over here, the family partnership team, myself, Ina, Liliana, and Wendy. So if you have any additional questions at the end and you don't have enough time to ask, or you don't have a chance before the session ends, please make sure you reach out to them, and I'll be sure to include their emails. I have it in the last slide of the presentation. So our role is to help eliminate barriers or to remove barriers from accessing information or understanding the school system. The liaisons provide school support for families in all of the schools. So the liaisons are also working at elementary schools. So as your child is moving from an elementary school to a middle school, the liaisons will be available to help your child and you better understand the school system. So if the liaison right now, for example, Liliana is at Clark, at Sunset, at IVE. And so those children who are moving to Issaquah Middle School, she will be able to make sure she answers all of them, because she will follow those families from elementary school to middle school. And then in 3 years, she'll also be able to help you and support you as your child enters high school. So this is a very big transition for many families, especially if they have not attended school in the United States. The elementary school system is very different from middle school system. For students, one of the big surprises is that there is no recess. So while children had a recess, 2 recesses at the elementary schools and a lunch in middle schools, there's only a 30-minute period and a break. Now, most schools also have microwaves. The good news for lunch. The good news is that lunches at schools are much more, they have a lot more options. And very often students get done eating lunch within the first 15 minutes. And so during the last 15 minutes, historically, this is pre-COVID, schools would have additional options for students to participate in, such as foosball areas. They could go to the library, they could go outside and play in the basketball court. So as things are changing and improve with our COVID pandemic endemic, we might see some changes and going back to some of those options during lunch. But lunch is about 30 minutes, and most students get done eating in about 15-20 minutes. And many times they either socialize the last 10 minutes or they have several activities that they might participate in. Now, a school day is divided into 7 periods, 6 main classes, and 1 homeroom. And there is a transition, about a 4 or 5 minute transition in between each class, during which time students can go to the locker or to the bathrooms. Lockers. Several of you asked about lockers. Yes, all the middle schools do have lockers, and the lockers are assigned to students at the beginning of the school year. And that's because the backpacks were very cumbersome and made the classrooms really tight and hard to walk around. But because of COVID and they wanted to minimize interaction the past 2 years, students have not been able to use the lockers. Some schools have gone back to allowing students to use their lockers these past couple of months, and probably may have students use lockers more by the end of the year. But hopefully it depends on where we are with COVID. Schools have lockers. Whether lockers will be assigned or not will be dependent on how safe it is for students to be able to stop at the lockers, because very often when they're at the lockers, they tend to congregate in the hallway a little bit more and there's less movement. And so they're trying to get the kids moving. Books. Most of the school books are online. My daughter, for example, is in 8th grade and she does not use any books at home. She accesses all her textbooks online, and the books that she does have, the teachers don't use as much, or they sometimes have alternate ways to use the text from the book. So most kids will not be carrying a book back and forth and will be getting the online access for their books. Many schools have class sets of books also, so that if they do need to use a book, the child can have the book at home and they'll just use a class set at school. So some of that has changed also because of COVID. So we're in a transitional stage area because of COVID, but right now everyone is pretty much using online books. Class supplies. If you go to the website, you will notice, and just can search it, there's a class supply list for all the middle schools. The supply list is very different than elementary schools. It's not as robust and as detailed and complex. It's quite simplified. And what happens is the first week of school, your teacher, because there are so many different teachers your child might have, each teacher might mention a few things that they want their students to have as class supplies. So my recommendation for you is not to buy too many materials that first week of school. Wait till the first 2 days of schools and find out what additional materials, what the child is going to need when school starts. Another big transition is after school clubs and sports opportunities, and we'll talk more about that at the end of the presentation. I have 3 slides just on that. Another one is homework help. Very often kids need help with their math or science homework, and there's after school homework help available often at the school. And so you can talk to the school or look at the e-news and get some information from the school regarding what date, what time, what classroom, which teacher will be providing the support at school. So one of the things I'm going to say right now is that this presentation is very robust and there's a lot of details. So it might feel overwhelming. Parents have said it's kind of like drinking out of a fire hose. So just note that it is a lot of information. So I hope you can, just give yourself grace and just realize that it's going to be a lot of information and you don't need to know and understand and absorb all of it today. You're welcome to watch the video, but this is just a slow process. You still have 7 months before your child starts, and a lot of this information will make more sense as your child is in middle school. But these are some of the things that our middle school parents have told us and given us information that they wish they knew before. Families that were new to the school system, things that they wish they knew as their child started middle school. So one of the big things to note that middle school truly is a transition year. It's the middle years. It's designed to help our students become more independent learners. In elementary school, the teachers would line them up, or the students would then line up and walk from the teacher's classroom to recess, to lunch, to their specialist teachers. Everything was a lot more organized and directed by the teacher. In middle school, students have a lot more flexibility, and we are really working on students' independence in the middle school level. When the bell rings after each class, students are dismissed, they open the door and everyone walks out and they have to find the next classroom on their own. And amazingly enough, they all do that perfectly well. The first couple of weeks, it's a little bit hard, especially if they have struggles at their locker, but they all get it. I have never had a child be lost in the hallway after the second or third week of school. And also the first 2 weeks of school, there are plenty of school staff in the hallway helping kids find their classrooms, helping kids open their lockers if they have a locker. So there's the schools, the teachers really understand the children's need and are very much there this first couple weeks and throughout the year to really help them adjust to that transition. But students in middle schools, one of the big things for them is to help them understand and start advocate for their own learning. So rather than the parent constantly or frequently communicating with the teacher regarding the child's needs, as a parent, we ask as a staff member, we ask the parents to help their child and coach their child in how to get this information, how to talk to the teacher, how to advocate for themselves. If your child is absent, what does that mean? What can they do to find out what the missed materials, lessons they need to make up, and how will that look like? When can they make it up? How long do they have to turn the missing assignment in? If they have a failing grade or if they didn't understand something, what do they do to solve that? So it's really about helping students problem solve and understand how they can succeed in middle school, because the expectation is once they get to high school, they're going to be a lot more responsible for their learning. So how do we make sure that they have those skills? So the other one is we should also model with your child how they can communicate with the teacher. So as we said, in middle school, we really try to encourage the student to communicate with the teacher as much as possible. So if your child needs to ask a teacher a question, what does that look like? You might have them practice with you, or you might help them sit on their computer and type up an email and help and teach them how to write this email to the teacher to ask their teacher questions. All students will have an Office 365 account that they can use to communicate with their classroom teachers and also with classmates. They also have Canvas accounts and they can use their Canvas accounts, and so can you. We'll talk more about Canvas later on, to send emails to teachers directly, and it's much easier to send emails via Canvas since you don't need to know or have memorized the teacher's emails or need to look it up or anything, email addresses. And as parent and caregivers, you can also encourage and talk to your students about asking for help, because very often students are very hesitant on what that looks like. So modeling how to ask, when to ask. What we find is sometimes families coming from other countries that there is their students are taught, don't bother the teacher, don't ask the teacher for help, don't. It's always like, just be quiet, raise your hand as needed, participate. But if you don't understand something, let me know, I will teach you. Don't bother the teacher with this information. So one of the things we want families to know is that if a child is struggling with learning something, to ask the teacher for help, because the teachers are there to help and they can come up with a plan on how they can best support that child in their learning. So the teachers work with students and they will help them learn how to advocate for themselves, but the teachers really are trying to work with the students to support them in their independence and their learning through those middle school years. There's a lot more communication between student and teacher in the classroom. So sometimes for parents, it's a little bit hard because it's not as visible. And so what is happening in this classroom becomes very nerve-wracking for parents through these transition years, because you don't know what your child is doing in the class. And in addition, middle school years are also very challenging since the children themselves are growing up and they themselves are not communicating with parents as much. And so parents struggle during this time because they don't know what's going on at school sometimes. And, we are trying to encourage the child to communicate with the teacher and they don't know if they did or did not. So it's not that we're saying taboo, you are not allowed to talk to teachers. We're just saying that coach your child first and then follow up second and see how it goes. So it's part of that transition. So communicating how middle school, So communication and how middle school communications work. So very rarely, if ever, you're going to have a flyer come home in your child's backpack. So this entire take home folder that you have in 5th grade doesn't happen in middle school. Rarely will you see flyers. So again, the e-news sent from the school is going to be critical. Also, sometimes teachers will send you a message via Skyward and make sure you're looking for that. Or some teachers might send a newsletter. It's usually language arts and social studies teachers will send that, but very often they will share information if they do via Skyward, but the information is primarily going to your child. Canvas is an amazing tool that we are using. It's the learning management system. You are all familiar with Clever in the elementary school level. In secondary, middle, and high school, we are going to see students use Canvas. And I know a lot of you are now nervous because you're like, Canvas, what's that? It's super easy to use and it is amazing, like the best thing ever, because it allows you to look at all of your child's classes in one screen. It's called your dashboard. You can see their grades, you can see their homework, you can see, it's amazing. Again, we'll go into more detail about Canvas later on, but you just need to know that Canvas is really the primary way of communication between you and your child's classroom teacher. You can also email teachers or communicate teachers via Canvas email, but honestly, I think an actual Skyward email is best. Schools also send information through Peachjar. You're familiar with that because elementary schools have that. The PTSA might send emails and information night, so you can get information through that. But Canvas, honestly, is great for communicating about specifics about your child's progress, about what your child's doing in class. All of that information is posted in Canvas. Canvas also has a fabulous calendar that you can see all the upcoming events in all the classes in one glance. Amazing. I'm not selling Canvas to any companies, by the way, for you, but just I do like Canvas. The school website is also a great source of information, and we'll look at some of the school's website through the course of this presentation. And if you have any questions, you should email your child's teacher with that specific question or concern. So there are no designated dates in middle school. So that's one of the things that surprises many parents, that there is no such thing as parent-teacher conferences. We don't have those in middle school. So if you want to talk to a teacher, then you can ask for that. And you can send an email and talk about your concerns. If there's something big going on, like let's say a child is really struggling emotionally, a child is struggling with many of their classes, what I would then recommend you do is email the school counselor, and the school counselor can really help you create a meeting with multiple teachers and help organize that greater meeting with more people. But otherwise, you're welcome to email, communicate, and try to meet up with any individual teacher at a time. And then they will tell you their preference on when they can meet, if they just want to have a phone conversation, back and forth email via communication via email. So that will also happen. Now, one of the things some parents were asking for was, how do I know which school my child will attend? So in the United States, one of the things to note is schools that you attend are directly dependent on your address. So if you, based on your address, you have an assigned home school. Now, there have been cases where parents have asked or applied, and it's called open enrollment, to attend a different school than your home school. But just so you know, you have to do that application every year. It's not automatic, and you have to apply if you have a younger sibling, for example, coming in. So, that has to be taken into consideration for the next year. So if, let's say next year you have your younger child who also wants to be in the middle school in that same school, you have to apply again, and it's not a guarantee. So you have to attend the school within your boundary that you live in. So just of note, the students at Apollo, Briarwood, and Maple Hills will be attending Maywood. Newcastle kids will be going to Cougar Mountain. Cougar Ridge kids will be going to Cougar Mountain. Issaquah Valley, now that's one of those split schools. 70% of those kids will be going to Issaquah Middle, 30% will be going to Cougar Mountain, and it's mainly those kids who are in the Tallis neighborhoods. So if you look at the feeder pattern, that'll tell you which middle schools they will be going to, and then which high schools they will be attending. And if you're unsure still, you can look, especially if you're new to the area, or if you're at one of these schools where it's split, you can go to this attendance map, and then the attendance maps of the schools right here will kind of help you understand where, based on your address and where you live, what that will look like for your child. Okay, so the attendance map. And then the other one that you can also use is in the bus link. In transportation, there's a link that says find your school, and that'll also help you. Worst case scenario, you call the school's registrar, you give them their address, they type it in, and they'll let you know what school you will be attending. Now, one of the great things, because this is a school district, your children that are in elementary school are automatically going to, their information will automatically transfer to the 6th grade school, their home school. So all the paperwork will be transferred. You do not need to re-register or enroll your child for the middle school if you're already at Issaquah School District elementary school. You do, however, every single year, you do, however, have to complete the verification process in August. It's called EVP. It'll happen around August 8th through August 15th. In March, so that's next month, you will be seeing some emails and communications coming from your elementary school, where the middle school will be doing a presentation. The middle schools are primarily doing a Zoom video presentation, and then they will have a Q&A following that. And during this time, they will provide you all the details on how to choose the courses your child will be taking in 6th grade. And so at that time in March, you will listen to the presentation. It's usually like a Microsoft form is released, and then you will click on different choices and choose the different courses for your child. So that's one of the things you need to do for 6th grade. Things you need to know, that transportation, your bus routes most likely will change. The bus stops are very different, often from elementary school to middle school. But you can, when you go through the EVP process in August, you will either choose yes or no for, are you taking a bus? And then if you're taking a bus, the bus route, you can check on the bus website, the transportation website for the district, for your bus stop, the time, and all that information. Your lunch account. When my child was in elementary school, I put money in her lunch account. She never used Apollo money. Not a problem. That money just carries on with her to middle school. And just FYI, your child has a lot more lunch options in middle school So the middle school has a different lunch menu than the elementary school. And also it's set up very differently because it allows students the flexibility of choosing their food rather than a tray being given to them. So when you go to the middle school and high school lunch menu, you will see that they have more options. So you can kind of, it says over here, in addition to the featured special of the day, each secondary kitchen often offers a variety of hot and cold entree options. So in addition to the regular one that is part of the meal, they'll have an option. And in addition to that, in middle and high school, students can buy something called a la carte items. I'm going to honestly tell you, very often it could be things like chips and drinks and everything. And so that they can spend, if you put money in their account, they can use the money in their account for these a la carte items. And the a la carte items usually are not part of the free and reduced lunch package. But lunches in middle and high school are quite different. As a middle school teacher for 14 years, and then when I switched to Clark when I was the dean, I was very surprised because I hadn't experienced lunches in elementary school. Some parents are asking about the highly capable program. If your child is in Sage and Merlin, you will get a letter, or if you have not already, to tell you what highly capable looks like at the middle school. Mainly it is the choices that you will be making during course selection for the highly capable program and some additional supports, but the highly capable department group in the district will give you more information about that. The other big one is your child's 504 IEP and health plans. As your child transitions from elementary school to middle school, if they have a 504 plan, which is a health plan for children with certain disabilities, then their school counselor, who is the manager, case manager for their 504 plan, meets with the middle school counselor to talk about what the 504 plan entails. Same thing happens with a nurse. The elementary school nurse meets with a middle school nurse to go over the health plan. And same thing happens. Several parents asked about their IEPs. If your child has an IEP, the IEP case manager will meet with you to talk to you about this transition, but the IEP teachers in elementary school also meets. One second, let's see if this works. They will also ask, they also meet with the parents. Sorry, the IEP teacher in elementary school also will meet with the middle school to go through this at that time. Okay. The calendar and schedule for the year. So just like in elementary school, the middle school is also divided into 3 trimesters. So every 12 weeks, the end of trimester. Now, in middle school, this is a lot more significant because the grading periods will end. You will see in Canvas, and then at the end of the trimester, they might be updating because they might post it in Family Access, the report card, and that is the grade for that trimester. And then it zeroes off again in the first week of the second trimester, and the students start accruing points. They will get points on assignments, on projects, on tests, on many different things. Middle school is a lot more familiar to what I experienced school like when I was attending school in India, where you see regular grades, you see test grades, you see homework grades, you see all these different grades. Because I know in elementary schools in the United States, grades are not as visible. You don't really know, have this regular report. And then in 12 weeks, based on conversations, you kind of know if your child is getting a 1, 2, 3, or 4, but you don't see the accumulation of grades. But in middle school, you really see that a lot more. The district calendar is on the website, and you can look at that information for next year. One of the things to note is that school attendance is critical in middle school. Very often students in elementary school, if they're absent here or there, they leave early, it doesn't end up being too problematic. But because in middle school, you only see the teacher for 50 minutes, attendance is very important. And when I was a science teacher at IMS, I'd always ask my parents, if you have to take your child out or be absent for dentist appointment or something optional, please don't do it during my class period. Ask Susan, her son was in my class in 6th grade, and it's really hard because if you're doing a lab, if you're doing a lesson, it's really hard to make up that information. And there's no such thing as recess that the kids can come in and sit through to catch up on anything. Students have to stay after school. Students do have to make up that assignment. It's not just excused or something. So attendance becomes a lot more important in middle school because it really impacts what the child is learning that day, especially if there are too many absences. So the class schedule, you will see that the bell schedule is going to be posted or is posted on all of the school's websites, and it's always on the same place on the school's website. Oh, sorry. I'm going to click one more time and see why my link is not opening. There we go. So if you have not seen this already, here's a very fresh and updated district website and school websites. And all of the bell schedules are posted in one glance. There are slight differences in bell times for each of the middle schools, so please note that. It only varies by 5 or 10 minutes, but there are some slight changes. But one of the big things for you as parents of elementary school children, remember that in middle school, that Wednesday is a late arrival. Okay, late arrival, and they also get released later in the day. And Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday, it's quite an early start date. School usually starts anywhere from 8:10 to 8:15 based on it. But this site on the website is amazing if you have not visited your school's website because it has lunch schedule, AM schedule, 2-hour delay, everything, grading a day early release. So this is an important item to note, is that the Friday or the week after the last day of the semester, look at the schedule. The school will send an email, but it's an early release day. So school will end at 10:55. Very often 6th grade parents unfamiliar with this change in middle school, and it takes them by surprise. So I just don't want you all to be surprised as 6th grade parents. Note that there will be a day after the end of the trimester where your children will be done early. It's an early release day is what it's called. And then otherwise, the other big thing to note is the Wednesday schedule. Wednesday class periods are about 30-35 minutes long. And so it is different than the regular Monday through Friday, Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, and Friday schedule. And you will also note that very often in Monday, in the other schedules, they have a class, which is kind of like a homeroom class. And we'll talk more about that through the presentation. So Wednesday, the delayed start, Friday, early dismissals on certain days, last 2 days also early dismissal. Family access. So one of the things that family access does amazingly well. So if you might want to look at that the first couple of days of school, or anytime if you're looking for information, especially about attendance or other things. But family access will post the schedule. It has, you can go to the website, yes, but if you go to family access, it's multiple things in one. It's showing you the period time for each of the classes. It's showing you the classroom number that your child will be at and the teacher. It'll also, your child's classroom, if they have an elective that changes each trimester, we'll talk more about that, but it'll also tell you what your child's classes for each of these electives. You don't need to memorize all this information. Just note that family access is a good place to go to under schedule to see information at a glance. Why I also wanted to post and have you look at family access on this slide is you will notice that there are a lot more options in family access than you had in elementary school. So if you look at your family access in the elementary, as an elementary school parent, these options, there are certain things that are added over here that you didn't have in the elementary school, such as gradebook and schedule. Okay. So class schedule. Each class is approximately 50 minutes long with about 4 or 5 minute transition time. Your classes, each one of your classes can have anywhere from 25 to 32 students. And the period size will vary. As a science teacher, sometimes I had classes, like maybe my fourth and fifth period would be 32 students. And sometimes some classes had 25 students. So even for teachers, our class size varies, but very often it's between 25, if we're lucky. Usually 28 is what they try to cap it as, but it can go up to 32. Each student, each school has some sort of a homeroom class. The homeroom class is called slightly different names at different schools. For example, at PCMS, it might be called Links Life, or it's called Links Life. At Maywood Middle School, it's a charger time. At PLMS and IMS, it's just homeroom. And Beaver Lake, it's called Bulldog Bonus Time. So, but it's their homeroom time where they usually do the announcements. But one of the big ones is they do social emotional learning curriculum during that time. And it's usually where some school business might happen during that time. So your child is going to have 4 core classes, a homeroom, and elective. So they have, it says, I noted right here that they'll have an elective class, and each of the electives at the different schools vary. So PCMS, for example, for Miss McDonald, the electives offered at PCMS are different than the electives offered for my child at IMS, but your school will give you more information about what those electives are and talk about that. What I will tell you is that all schools have band, chorus, and orchestra as electives, and they're year-round electives. Band and orchestra, if your child is a 6th grader, and even if they don't know how to play an instrument, you take those 2 classes in 6th grade, and the orchestra and band teacher actually teach students during that time how to play an instrument. They have options of either buying it or renting the instrument. So there are many options. It's going to be very independent, dependent on the school. So for details about that, talk to your school. But what you need to know is that if your child doesn't know how to play an instrument, they will learn in 6th grade. Of course, they'll work on singing. All students also will take, this is in all 3 grade levels, 6th, 7th, and 8th. Every year, they will take PE and health as one of the required classes for the course of the year. So students will then have one more class that they can take, which is the elective, which would be band, chorus, orchestra, or another class. Susan, can you present the slide?
Hi, everybody. Lorna has really been talking so much information, but it's going to be great. And all of the middle school teachers are really excited to have your 5th graders come. So in terms of the trimester schedule that Lorna has been talking about, as she already said, the school day is divided into those 6 periods, about 50 minutes long. And then each school has the homeroom at a different time. I know at my school at PCMS, we have it first thing in the morning. And sometimes at other schools, it will vary. But a really big change coming from 5th grade is that students will be moving after their class to another part of the building. So that's a very big change from elementary school. And after the first week or so, students usually come to really like this. Most of them really like getting up and leaving and going to a different class. And not only is it a different classroom, but their classmates, their peers are different. So everything is mixed up. They're not moving with one cohort like they're used to in elementary school with their specialty as well as their classroom. Every class is different. So they really get to see a lot of different students throughout the day, and most of them will really enjoy that. Lorna has already said that the class size varies, which I can confirm. My classes vary from 25 to 32 this year, and that's pretty much every year. The things that stay the same are those classes, the core classes, math, science, social studies, and language arts. The teacher stays the same, and those classes last all year. Lorna's already mentioned, depending if they take a year-long elective, certainly if they're taking a music elective, that's the same teacher the year long as well. And the only thing that varies is if they're taking a trimester elective. And so they could end up with 3 different electives in that spot. And it will vary, as Lorna said, more information coming from your homeschool. That homeroom teacher, my students, each school does it slightly differently. Sometimes it's all 6th graders, 7th graders, and 8th graders. Other schools mix those ages together. So that varies a little bit by building in terms of homeroom, or sometimes we call it advisory. I think that Lorna mentioned already that the trimesters are really how we really are looking at grading when we're at middle school. But not only do you get a grade at the end of the trimester, but midway through, grades are also posted. And Lorna has here, she talks about Skyward. We've been talking about Canvas so much because that is the place to look. But at mid and end tri, grades are also posted to Skyward. And those are the official grades. So teachers are going to be posting to Skyward twice, once at the end of the trimester and also midway through, so that you're able to really see a couple of different snapshots how your students doing in each of their classes. The final trimester grade, and again, this is really, it varies. If you have a year-long class, we're not really looking because we keep going in terms of the class continues, but most students like it so that if somehow they haven't had a great trimester, as Lorna said, things start over in the 2nd trimester, and then they start again in the 3rd trimester, which it's really nice to have a clean slate sometimes if one trimester has been a little bit more challenging. So that's what we're talking about. Final trimester grades is just because it's going to start again with that new trimester. I think Lorna already said that the trimesters are 12 weeks and that the report cards are on Family Access. And I think she already mentioned how the names vary for advisory. The dates are here. So Lorna looks like she's already got next year's dates in terms of the trimesters. And so, but it is pretty much standard that the trimester, the first one ends right at the beginning of December. Sometime in March is where the 2nd trimester ends. And then the last one is at the end of the year. All of that early release information will definitely be sent to you. You definitely don't have to memorize any of those dates. Schools send out all of those reminders in the hope that no family is surprised by any time where there's a schedule change for your student. We really try to give you lots of heads up on that.
Thank you so much, Susan. Just a reminder that this is approximate days, and we just put it in there because we know that we don't want you to be surprised, and you can look for that. I'm just looking at some of the questions in the chat, and yes, if your child needs to be absent, just like in elementary school, parents always have the option to take their kids out and their child being absent for a variety of reasons, and just make sure you're communicating that information with the school. I think I just want to make sure that parents know that it is important they recognize that the child will be responsible for making up missed work and lessons. And so the teachers will be posting their absence policies and makeup policies at the beginning of the year. So each teacher creates something called a syllabus, and within the syllabus, they provide information as to how work needs to be made up from their absences. So I know for my children, when they were in elementary school, if they are absent a couple of days, it wasn't really a big deal. There was really no repercussions or missed work, or didn't seem to impact their grade, just the score wise. And they didn't get a 0 or something on a test or assignment because they were absent that day. But over here in middle school, that they are going to be expected to make up that work, and very often it might require staying after school or for a test, for a test, and sometimes for a lab, if they're absent for a lab. But for an assignment, they might have 1 or 2 days or whatever time based on teacher decision to make up that missed work. So highly capable, you should be getting a letter if you're in Sage or Merlin as to what that would look like in middle school. And if you're not in the highly capable program because you're new to the school, you can always apply for your child to be in highly capable. I believe the deadline very often is September 15th of each year. And you can go to the school district website, search up highly capable, and there's under academics, and there'll be information there. The registration dates, each school will be having the event in mid-March. We'll talk about more about that in the presentation. And if you change your address, this is a good question. If you move during the course of the school year, you need to double check what is your new homeschool. So let's say you were living in the Sunset homeschool feeder pattern, and then you move up towards Sammamish and you live closer to Discovery, you will be expected that you will not be going to IMS. Even if your child just started 6th grade or middle of 6th grade, you will be expected to have your child transfer to whatever school, the Discovery, that new area, the new address you live at, where they feed into. So that is something very often parents are surprised about, that we ask families to withdraw from the middle school and go to this new middle school. Most of our middle schools and high schools are at capacity, so we usually make sure that it's only kids who live in that school. So as long as you live within the feeder pattern, not a problem. You will be able to access and attend the school where you live, but you just have to make sure you're living within that feeder pattern, the address. Okay, and at this time, we'll go to our next slide, which will be on a middle school. So one of the big things that happened this year was that all students in the middle school had a one-to-one, had a laptop that they were working on. So the expectation is when the students walked into the classroom, the teachers would say, take out your laptop, go into the announcements or modules and see what's going on. And here's the assignment, click on this button, and the teachers would teach them how to use their dashboard, their site on Canvas to access learning for the day. But students would all go directly into use their laptops every single day for learning in the classroom. Students are all assigned an Office 365 account. And so they very often can communicate with the teacher using that. They have access to Word, PowerPoint, and all of the different tools on Office 365. When I was a teacher at a middle school many years ago, the kids had to come to school to access some of these Windows application, but now Office 365 is every single child in our district has an account. So that's amazing. And as I said earlier, many of the school textbooks are online. So students can access the textbooks from Canvas accounts. And if a student doesn't, if the students may check out a laptop from the school to use for the school year. Okay, so all children have access to a laptop. Canvas, this is a big one we were talking a lot about. And Canvas is a learning management system, just as Clever was the learning management system for elementary school. Canvas is a learning management system at both the middle and the high school. All course information, grades, the syllabus, expectations for all of the teachers are posted on Canvas. It's the primary way families can check weekly progress of the child, including what their grade is, any missing assignments, comments. And that's one of the wonderful things. If there was a comment made on an assignment, sometimes something of concern, the teacher might make a note in the comment section of the assignment in the Canvas gradebook. And that is the primary way teachers is communicating with students, and you have access to those comments from the teacher. Students and family accounts are different. The student account is a lot more detailed. They have access to their classmates, the roster for the class, pretty much, assignments that they can do, tests that are posted in Canvas so they can go into Canvas and take the test. Of course, they limit the access for families so that families cannot take tests, turn in assignments, see what the roster is. So it's a very different account, and I strongly encourage, because it's not acceptable, that parents use only their account and not use their child's login to get into Canvas. Students use Canvas daily, and so they will be taught. So don't worry and be afraid that your child doesn't know how to use Canvas. In sixth grade, the teachers are amazing. In the first couple of weeks, months, really, they really go over how to use Canvas to access all of this. And by the time they become eighth graders, they're super pros, and they will be teaching you tips on how to use this. And this is from experience. My child started using Canvas in the start of seventh grade, and now, she doesn't need me. She can do everything by herself. There will be a Canvas training session, just like this session. We do we do a session for the parents education in September. So if you feel like you need some support, don't hesitate. We will help you. We do two. We do an in-person, just a Zoom session, and then we also do a in-person for parents who might need extra support on learning Canvas. And then sixth grade students will learn about and access their Canvas account the first week of school, and so will you. So don't expect that you will have access to your child's Canvas account till after school starts. Okay, so just note that that first week of school, just wait for 1 or 2 days before you set up and create your Canvas account. If you go to the Canvas site, there will be more information as to when you will be able to access the Canvas site. So to get into Canvas, just so you know, there is a link on all the schools' website, but for me, on all the schools' websites look the same. You click on this drop-down arrow, you'll see Clever that you're using right now, and then Canvas, and then Canvas page looks like this. Your child will be able to log into their Canvas account. You can log into your Canvas account on this. There are lots of tutorials. So if you had nothing better one day and you're just hanging out in the car or somewhere fun on a beach in somewhere, you can watch all these videos and learn how to use Canvas, or you can just wait till it's out and then kind of play with it. It's pretty simple, but all of this information will be available to you at that time. And on here in August, September, the person in charge of Canvas will also post when there's access for sixth grade parents to log in and set up their account. So this is how to set up your account for you, but just note you probably won't be able to do it like August 30th or September 1st once class has started, once school has begun. Okay, and then next, role of the counselor. So the role of counselors do change a lot more in middle school. The counselor becomes the main point of contact for general support, not the homeroom teacher. So very often in some countries, it is a homeroom teacher that will communicate with the parent and say, your child is not doing well, your child needs this and this is happening. So homeroom is very different concept over here. Homeroom teachers are not going to be communicating with you regarding your child's progress, okay? So keep in mind, especially for families that are coming from, let's say, China or certain other countries where it's a homeroom teacher who does all of that, that is not done. If your child is doing poorly in any one of the classes, you really will look at that through their Canvas grades, or maybe the teacher will communicate with you if there's a behavior concern. And if you have a concern, you can always communicate with the school counselor about their grades, about social emotional concerns, and the teacher can help you navigate the school and meet up with the multiple teachers, as I discussed earlier. So the role of school counselor in middle school is quite different also, because there's a lot more academic counseling that might be happening, and you might want to talk to the school counselor at the middle school regarding course selection, class choices, advanced pathways, elective classes, and so forth. There are also sometimes liaison between the parent and multiple teachers, not just a specific teacher, if there's a greater question. If it's a specific classroom, then you can talk directly to the teacher. But if there's something like my child is falling asleep in all the classes, or my child is failing all their classes, or my child is blah, blah, blah in multiple classes, then the counselor can really help you with that. The counselor is also the main point of contact if you need financial assistance or help with any basic needs. We are seeing a lot more students struggling with social emotional development and growth, and just struggling with depression and anxiety in general. The school counselor is an excellent, amazing point of contact for that. The school counselor can also connect you with a school-based Swedish health mental counselor that the district works with Swedish, and we have mental health counselors available at school where the students can meet with those counselors and have access to working with those counselors for different reasons. And so with the rise of anxiety and depression in schools and not just in our district, but around the country and world, we really want to make sure that our students are feeling well supported with that support. So make sure you and your child know about this resource if something is happening with your child's emotional or social well-being. So there are 2 counselors per middle school. So in elementary school, there was only 1, and your counselor is based on your last name. Students will have the same counselor all 3 years in middle school, just like in elementary school. And students can request to see a counselor by requesting a meeting in the office. Sometimes they have little mailboxes. Each school has a different setup on how they can meet them. Just like in elementary school, we also have something called PBSES, which is social emotional support at middle school. So the link for you to find more information is here. And part of that is a second step curriculum that they teach students skills on social emotional information during that homeroom, charger time, links time. And that site is also good because it has quite a lot of resources for families. If you're not going to, just this is a FYI in case you have this question. When your child does go to middle school, they will have resources for you regarding for families regarding this PBSES and social emotional support. Okay, so resources for families, the social emotional learning, and some of the curriculum can be found over here. The other one I wanted you all to note is on the counselor, who your child's counselor is. Each school's website has this information, but you can also look at the main district website that has all of the counselors listed on there at each school. So note it's broken by last name. Students A through L work with Rashi Eisenberg. At Pacific Cascade, for example, Laura Mesterol, A through K. And it has this links directly to their email. There's their telephone number. And then the different supports we have for social emotional supports with the mental health services, suicide prevention resources, all the different resources we have in our district for our students. And right now you're not going to communicate with your middle school counselor. So if you have questions about registration, about course selection, all of that, this year until the end of June, you will be communicating with your 5th grade with the elementary school counselor. In August, September, when school starts again, that's when you would contact one of the middle school counselors. So sometimes parents want to know, I have questions about course selection or mental health or something. Right now, the elementary school parents still communicate through the elementary school counselors, is what I just want to make sure we're aware of. Homework. Susan, would you like to talk about homework?
Sure. And I would say that this is just the beginning of this. I think this really varies by school, and it really varies by, class, and there's lots of differences. And if your student is in one of the advanced pathways, but students can expect to have some homework. I think for the most part, math is a subject area that often has practice almost every night. And the other classes will have homework sometimes, and that will vary. And so the syllabus that Lorna mentioned really talks about expectations around homework and when it's due, and all of the details around late and absences. So all of that information will be coming, but I think is good for parents and students to know that in middle school, there is likely to be homework, which they may not have had at all in elementary school. So that can be a big change. Canvas is the website that's mentioned here in terms of where those assignments are posted. So Lorna made a plug for Canvas. Teachers love Canvas, and it's where we send students and parents in terms of assignments. If anything's late or missing, or if your student was absent, that's the place to go. And that's why putting the grades in there, it really is one-stop shop for students and parents. And it's been a really fabulous change over the last 2 years. And so it's really a hub of all communication, homework, grades, emailing teachers. It's really great. And then I'll just say with absences, Most teachers, especially this year with COVID, have really made robust Canvas sites. Even in my science website for the Canvas, I have pretty much virtual labs. They may not be looking at the microscope in class, but I have pictures and videos and other things available on Canvas. So I think a lot of teachers have even made, even science teachers, it's not perfect, it's not a lab, but I have things there for students that are absent to help them not miss the learning, because it can be really challenging, as Lorna said. And I give that same speech about, please don't do the orthodontist during science, but we do try to provide things, and Canvas is a way that really allows us to be, just more rigorous in terms of being able to supply students with things if they are absent. Those policies about all of what Lorna's already said, teachers go over the syllabus in the early days of when school starts so that students are aware of the policies, but we go over them again and again, because certainly, especially as sixth grade teachers, we know that students are learning these procedures and teachers can have variances. And I would say that for sixth grade teachers, it's certainly at my school, we're very flexible and we expect students to take a while to make this big transition from elementary to middle school. And as sixth grade teachers, we embrace that, and that's what we love. So again, teachers will vary in terms of sometimes homework is graded, sometimes it's just for practice, and it really does vary by teacher. So I would say stay tuned, and students will be aware of it, because again, we'll keep letting them know what's it for. There's usually a purpose for homework. Sometimes it's practiced, and sometimes it's really for mastery of the topic. And so all of that will be provided to students as well as parents, so that everybody is aware of what the procedure is.
Thank you so much, Susan. And just a reminder, a parent asked about this. You won't have access to Canvas until your child is actually starting sixth grade, like the first or second day of school in sixth grade. You all, if your child is in the district, you already have a family access account. The family access account looks different, but it's only once your child is registered in the school do you have access to family access, and in middle school to Canvas, or high school into Canvas. Okay, and we're now going to talk more about something a lot of parents have been asking questions about. Just a reminder that in middle school, your schedule is going to be a full year of language arts, a full year of social studies, a full year of math, a full year of science. Then you'll have a full year taken with health and PE classes. So they're called electives, but all students are, it's a required elective is what it is. So all school students have to take health and PE. They will take a homeroom class. This is for sixth grade. And then you have one class left, right? Because you have 4 core classes, the homeroom class, the full year required elective, and then it's a 7-period day. Pretty much you have the last class, and that class is your elective. It's very much an optional class, which will either be band, chorus, orchestra, or they will take different kinds of classes. Now, students who are in ELL, English language learners, or if they're multilingual learners, they will take their elective class will be the class in the multilingual ELL program. Okay. So this is a very complex one about curriculum pathways and a middle school curriculum. So I'm going to have Susan start off with this.
And let me just say that I love that this is happening now. I know in my school in mid-March, there's going to be another presentation on Zoom that this is really looked at in more detail. So I love that you're getting sort of an opportunity to start thinking about this. So in our school for sixth graders, the sixth graders will the incoming sixth graders, your fifth graders, will be getting information during the day. And then that night, there'll be a Zoom presentation. Stay tuned for details, but that will include how to access the forms that need to be completed, along with the dates that all of that needs to be done. I think what's really important to know is that you get to decide with your student in terms of self-selecting the courses that they're going to take. So in other words, even if your student has been in Sage or Merlin and accelerated classes, every student gets to have options to choose different levels in math and science in particular, as well as language arts. And so know that the teachers will help in terms of some scores that can help let you know whether or not your student is really ready for the different levels. So there'll be lots more detail coming from the middle school in terms of what makes sense for your student. I think that's important to note, especially for science, where there is an opportunity for students to skip sixth grade science. But I will say, and Lorna and I have both been sixth grade science teachers, why would anyone want to skip sixth grade science? Because it's awesome and fun. It's life science. But certainly there is an option to do that. And there's an option to do accelerated math. And with math, again, you'll get this information at your school. There's really an importance placed on what is best for your student right now, because there is another opportunity in math to do something more accelerated. So there's opportunities that it doesn't mean the first math you choose is where your student is going to be. So I think it's really important when that time comes to figure out what makes sense, what teachers in the elementary school are recommending for your child and what makes sense. I think the last bullet point is probably one that really was important to me and for my own children in the Issaquah School District, is to look at what other things are going on in the life of your sixth grader in terms of the time. I'm always amazed at the amount of outside activities outside of academics that students are involved with, whether it's, piano lessons, multiple sports, all sorts of things. I think it's really important for you to sit down with your student and look at what else is going on and try to figure out, because the accelerated classes where there's, different pathways usually you need to figure out that your student will have more homework in those. Additionally, there's definitely the expectation that there's more maturity. And if they're skipping sixth grade science and jumping into seventh grade, they'll be with seventh graders, not with other sixth graders in most schools. So I think it's really important to look at not just where they are academically. I think it's important to look at where they are emotionally and where they are with organization, and also the extracurriculars. So I think there's a lot of different things to look at. So more coming about, there is a little math science gap. If students are too far ahead in science and don't have the right math, there can be an issue, but there's some options to make that up. So right now, I think it's just important to be aware of this. And this form looks like Lorna has put this in, what this will end up looking like in terms of what you're selecting. So you can see on the top line, they're looking at two different options for language arts, regular and one that's more accelerated, two different maths where they're going ahead in math. But again, there's another opportunity to do a compacted math. And then they can skip sixth grade science and go to seventh grade. And that means that they'd be taking high school biology in eighth grade. So you don't have to memorize this, but I think it's important to know that families get to decide and get to select in terms of these different pathways in these three core classes.
Thank you, Susan. And I think that's one of the hardest concepts for many families to understand, that it is self-select. And the concept of self-selecting is tremendous. You don't want to make the wrong decision for your child. And so parents are very hesitant and fearful that they will make the wrong decision. Should I put my child in all of the advanced classes? Is that the best decision for my child? What should I do? So there's a lot of hesitancy and kind of fear sometimes, because you don't want to make this mistake. And it ends up being, it is self-select, and it is a decision made by the parent with the conversation with the child as to what is best for the child based on their interest. In the United States, a focus is very much on creating well-rounded children. So children who have a lot of those hobbies and sports and music and participating in different activities. And that's what colleges will also be looking for, the extracurricular, the activities, what are they involved with. Students are also need to know that in those more advanced classes, there is usually more homework associated with that. in the advanced and regular language arts classes, that's a choice every single year, 6th, 7th, or 8th grade. So if you choose to be in the regular language arts in 6th grade, you always have the option to go to 7th grade advanced and 8th grade regular advanced. Every year, you can change your mind as to if it's going to be advanced or regular for language arts. For math, that is the harder one, because once you're on a pathway, it's really hard to get off that pathway. And the only way to get off is if you retake a class. So if you skip 6th grade math and you're doing it, the only choice is compact, which is 6th and 7th grade math at the same time. Usually students who are in Merlin will choose that option, and I will show you a source where you can go and read more information to see what option is best for you in math, and a lot of information around that. In science, I will definitely say that I am biased, along with Susan, that we don't think students should take 7th grade Earth and Space, mainly because I was a biology teacher for 5 years. And at that time, biology used to be taught in 10th grade. And because parents in the Issaquah School District asked and pushed, the Issaquah School District moved biology to the 9th grade level. Now, again, many districts throughout the country still do biology at the 10th grade level, and biology textbooks are written at the 10th grade reading level. So reading is critical. So your child really needs to be a really, really strong reader to be skipping 6th grade life science, because then they will be taking 8th grade biology. In 8th grade, they will take biology written at the 10th grade reading level. But one of the reasons why life science, this is biased and based on my opinion as a science teacher of 19 years, 6th grade science creates the foundation and teaches students about mitosis, meiosis, and other items for life science, so they can do better in biology at 9th grade. So they're missing that. It's really hard. And students, if they don't do well in biology in 8th grade, then they can retake biology in 9th grade. So just so you know, the option, they can totally do it, but if they don't do well, they can retake that class in 9th grade. So parents want to know what happens if my child doesn't do well. Well, they have to just stick through it through middle school, and in 9th grade, they can then get out of that pathway and take whatever pathway they want. Or, if they didn't do well, they can retake it. Or if they just want to hold off and not take chemistry in 9th grade, there are other options in school. So what I have here is, I will be, once you fill out the form, I will send you this entire slide deck. But one of the important places that I would like all of you to look at, and this is kind of your homework for the next 3 weeks, if you have questions, if you're totally happy with what you think your child's going to be doing, no worries at all. But this link that I have put in here, it talks about all the 6th grade curriculum and standards for all of the classes that your child will be taking in 6th grade. But in addition, on the side, you will see these menus. And so in science, it's going to tell you what the pathway and the option looks like for science. And so it shows you, which pathway, if you're doing path 1, life science or science, physical science, and then what the rest of it looks like. Or if you're doing the other pathway, what that's going to look like over there. And then you can go to the high school course catalogs, which will also give you a lot more information regarding this. And then for math, they have lovely graphs also to help you understand this. So you can do this throughout. You can do this now. You can do this in March after you listen to the presentation from the schools. But it's an overwhelming amount of information coming at you, and we get it. What we want to do is provide you resources so that you can go and see and do your own research and talk about it, talk to other parents, talk to middle school parents who've gone through this, talk to your child as to what they want to do, talk to your child's 5th grade teacher. We are not going to ever tell you what class your child should take. What we can do is just make recommendations, and then you and your child will self-select. And so that it'll have your options. For 6th grade, we recommend that all students, and you'll see that, start with CC6. And in 7th grade, we recommend that you wait. And then if you're going to compact them in 7th grade. However, for students who are in Sage and Merlin program, they might consider going straight into 7, 8, and then following the rest of the classes over here. And so more information will be found for that. So Students who are going to skip, you can see skipping, what that means. So several parents asked me about skipping CC6 in 6th grade. The link to that and information so that you can inform yourself as to what is best is over there. So what's the grade level? What's the compacted, where you started in 7th or 8th, or if you are in Merlin, Sage, if you're going to go into this program. All of this again is based on your choice and your decision, but make sure you check out the site if you have questions and for more details, because sometimes it's really hard to answer individual questions for your individual situation. If you want to just brainstorm with someone, one of the liaisons would be a great person to chat with. They have children who've gone through the program, or you can email me and I'm happy to talk to you and just give you, experiences based on what I've seen in students in my 14 years at IMS. Okay, and then testing and grading. So when your child gets into middle school, you're going to see a very different grading system. You will see percentages, you will see letter grades, and based on the letter grades, they will be getting a grade point average, and then it talks about how to score your grade point average, adding them all up and dividing by the number of courses. There is no grade in homeroom. Sometimes parents stress out when they see no grade or P in homeroom. No worries, no grade in homeroom. An F is considered failing. A D, students still get a grade for, credit for, and there's no ranking. So we don't have, the top 10 kids in 6th grade or 7th grade or whatever. There's no ranking whatsoever of students 6th through 8th grade. You're never going to know this information. Most teachers and administrators don't even know who the top kids are, the ranks of students. Colleges also do not see your middle school grades. Now, the only time they might see your middle school grades is if your child is taking a high school credit class in 8th grade. So for example, if they take biology, or if they take the algebra or geometry class, and more information will be given to you at that time. Students also have the opportunity to take a foreign language, Spanish or French in 8th grade, which is also considered to be a high school level class. So those high school level classes are the only ones that colleges would see, but otherwise in 6th grade, there are no classes that your child is going to be putting on their high school transcript. Students will have a lot of projects. Some of those projects they will do individually, or sometimes it's in small groups. Classroom teachers give students time to work on these projects in class, but just note that it does end up being a kind of a group grade, or other people's work and how your child works with other students will impact their final grade. SBA. So one of the things we mentioned earlier, and I'm just going to go back to it for a second. As you self-select, we recommend that you use your SBA or your iReady scores. So at the beginning of this year, students took an SBA, which kind of helped them see where they were last year. But you can still use that information because, you can see what the general ranking was and how they're doing in reading and math. Honestly, I like the iReady score a lot more for that, because the iReady score really gives a lot more information regarding the grade level and understanding. And you can see in the report, in the iReady scores, where they are in math and science and in the different categories also, to see if they're ready for that. So iReady and SBA, conversations with teachers, conversations with the child, are all good ways to get ready for, to help you choose with your child their courses for next year. And as I talked about earlier, attendance is key. Students are accountable for being in class on time and be prepared to learn. Students may be subject to school consequences if frequently tardy. So once the kids get off the bus, they have to walk to their class, and then they've got to walk to the different classroom periods. So sometimes kids tend to dilly-dally or whatever, so there are consequences. So especially in 6th grade, we really try to help students recognize the importance of getting to the class on time and being ready in their seat with their materials out, so that they're ready to learn. As a teacher, that's one of the things I really drilled with my class students. You need to be in your seat, assignment out, pen or paper in hand, ready to go because I only had 54 minutes to teach, and I want to use that time wisely. So, the routines of the school are really thought by each teacher. So in sixth grade, especially, the sixth grade teachers are amazing. Well, I was a sixth grade teacher, but not touting my own horn or Susan's. We're just saying that we recognize that because it's a transition, we want to make sure that we're supporting our students with this transition. In order to participate in after-school activities, the student must be in attendance for at least one half of the school day. Students are typically allowed 1 day for each day of absence to complete, and students are responsible for missed work when absent. Extended absences for travel are discouraged in middle school. That doesn't mean that it doesn't happen. It's just something that you have to apply and have a conversation with the administration to apply for a prearranged absence. And prearranged absences in middle school definitely impact students a lot more than a prearranged absence in elementary school. This year was slightly different because of COVID-related illnesses, and teachers were a lot more flexible and fluid in the attendance policies, but that's mainly because of COVID. But we're not looking for attendance absences due to vacation, travel, and those kinds of reasons. So that we're really discouraging, because we do find attendance to be very, very important, starting at the middle school and secondary level, elementary too, but middle school, it's a lot harder to recover when you're absent and catch up with all the missed work. We do have the English Language Learner Program. Now we're retitled it Multi-Lingual Learner Ell. The WIDA is the test the students will take in February and March to check students' level of English language proficiency. Only students who took the test to qualify for the MLL program will take that WIDA, the test. So if your child is already in the ELL program, early in the school year in September, they will take a test to see how they're doing, if they're staying in the program, where they're at. And then depending on where they're at, they may be exited. In middle school, they actually have a class, English language learner class, with a teacher who is an ELL, MLL certificated teacher, who helps the students in her class with academic language. So the focus really in middle school is academic language, so they can be successful in science, so they can be successful in math, because so much of the words they use in those classes are academic words. And so sometimes the student might be able to speak English, but they have a hard time accessing the school language, the academic language needed for success in the classroom. So that's where the middle school teachers help. English language teachers help our students. We have school nurses, just like in elementary schools, in all the building, and they're there to protect and promote student health, facilitates optimal development, advances academic success. At some point through middle school, students usually take a vision and a hearing test, just like they did in elementary school. If your child has any allergy, and they need a EpiPen, make sure you're checking in with the school nurse. If your child has diabetes, asthma, seizure disorders, or medical conditions that might impact school performance, make sure you're communicating this information with the school nurse. The school nurse can also help you if you need assistance, such as food, clothing, or medical insurance, dental support. And so then they have some resources that they can share with you. You will be filling out a confidential health form every single year, and the school nurses use that information as they help prepare and support your child. And as I said earlier, your 5th grade school nurse will meet with the 6th grade or the middle school nurse for families that have larger concerns, like for students who have larger concerns such as diabetes and asthma, anything that could be, the nurse really needs to be prepared and ready to support that child. So your immunizations are the same for 5th grade to 6th grade. So that really doesn't change. So if you're new to the school district, or new to Washington State, or new to the country, just make sure you have the dosage, the immunizations that all the elementary school students would have needed. When you're going to 7th grade, that's when there is a change. And so just a reminder that in 7th grade, you're going to have to have your required Tdap vaccination before you start 7th grade. So while your child is in 6th grade, just keep that in mind if your child has a physical appointment during the course of the year. But another big one for physicals is if your child plans on playing a sport, one of the great things about middle schools, your child needs to have completed a physical from their medical person after June 1st, okay? So if you have a medical appointment like in April or May, just note that the physical has to be done after June 1st for them to be eligible to play sports in middle school. So fees and cost. During EVP in August, you will see a very different list of fees for the middle school level. One of the big ones will be ASB card. ASB cards is something that all middle school students are encouraged to participate in if they can, because it helps with all of the sports clubs and music programs in the school. If a student wants to be in a club, if they want to play in a sport, if they want to be in a music program, if they want to go to after school ASB sponsored activities, they need to have their card to participate in those items. In addition, for sports, there is a $20 fee for most JV and varsity sports, and it's $50 for JV varsity sports, track and field, cross country, those kinds of sports. And if it's just an intramural sport, which is mainly non-competitive sport, then it is a $20 fee. So it's larger for sports that they're going to compete with the different schools. So for example, IMS in sports will compete with PCMS, with Susan's school, or with Beaver Lake or Pine Lake. So the 6 schools do sport competitions for the sport and will compete with each other periodically. In middle school, there is also a school PE uniform. So check with the individual school as to what that might look like. Sometimes there's a little bit flexibility in what part of the uniform is required. Many schools, they might say, you have to have this PE shirt and the pant, you can wear leggings or something with the PE shorts on top of that. So check with your school what that might look like. If you're playing doing an instrument, sometimes some schools have rentals available at the school, and it's very much dependent on the stock available at that school and the demand for certain musical instruments, and of course also what they have in good condition. So the school will give you information as to what other companies you can go in the area to rent musical instruments. Yearbook, also something that'll be on the list. It's not required, but if your child wants to have a yearbook to sign with their classmates, they might want to buy that. A science lab fee is often required in most schools, and it varies depending on what middle school you're at. And very often one of the requirements is safety goggles for science. Elective classes, depending on the elective, there might be fees associated with that. And note that for many schools, or for all schools, there is financial assistance available to families who qualify. And so if your family needs that support, please talk to your child's school counselor. End of August, early September is when you'll be able to check in with the middle school counselor regarding scholarships for these fees. So one of the things parents.
Lorna, just as a reminder, you have about 15 minutes left.
Sounds good. I think I can make it.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you. ASB. So that is a new concept in middle school and high school. ASB stands for Associated Student Body. Now, if you go to these websites, there is a section in each of the schools' websites that tells you more about what is ASB. One of the parts of ASB is also student leadership. Okay, so under ASB, you will see this over here. IMS has a great description about ASB. It tells you what ASB stands for. It's part of the school government. Some of you might hear kids say, I want to run for president, vice president, treasurer, secretary. And so usually those are 8th graders who are then going to kind of govern the school, the management of certain activities, and the student body. It's a student voice group pretty much. And so the money you put into ASB really helps support clubs and sports and pay for certain aspects. And then we have many clubs available at the schools. And again, financial aid available if you need that support. Clubs and after school. I really want to make sure we talk about that, because one of the things I love the most about middle and high schools is the amazing variety of clubs that middle schools and high schools offer to all our students. And if the entire, of course, point of having a club is to really have the kids meet and interact with each other and socialize, to really help them socially. And so if a certain club doesn't exist, note that a group of students can get together and talk and apply to create a new club, and then find an advisor with the help of the ASB advisor at the school to start a new club. So my daughter in 6th grade and some of her friends wanted to start a writing club, and they were able to do so. But you will see that there's a huge selection of clubs available at each school, and each school posts this information on their website for clubs. And so when you go to the school's website, if you're not sure, and you can kind of do it now and just to check what is available. So over here you can see these are all of the school clubs available at IMS right now. So right now it is definitely fewer than was in previous years, and that's because of COVID. And in previous years, there were anywhere from like 15 to 20 clubs sometimes at schools, meeting on different days, and then they post different rooms too. So just note that, hopefully things will go back to our pre-COVID days, where not fully back to our pre-COVID days, but kind of an in-between world somewhere. And so clubs are definitely available at schools to help students socialize, meet each other, and really do something to help encourage their passion for whatever, Dungeons and Dragons, chess, whatever they want. They can kind of find a club that meets their needs. Now, the other thing I love about clubs and sports in middle schools is the fact that you as a parent don't have to drive your child home. There is something known as an after-school bus. And after-school buses are available on Mondays through Thursdays, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. You can see the route. The school district, somebody asked me about this. If you go to programs and services under buses, so again, programs and services, buses, you can fill out this information to find out your bus route for your child. This is, of course, in August. You're going to do this in August once your child is in the new school, because it won't be accurate, since right now it's going to give you a 5th grade bus route information. So that will be an e-link. But once your child is at one of the middle schools, you will see what the after-school bus routes are for those schools. And the bus routes are not the exact same route as your child normally goes to. I'm going to honestly tell you it's definitely a little further, because it's one bus route for multiple buses that might normally get there. The times are slightly later too, because they're staying 1 hour after school, but it is there. It is an option, and many children take advantage of this option and stay after school for sports or clubs, or getting help with teachers sometimes. And then they will use these after school buses that the schools provide for the students. And then in addition to after-school opportunities, sometimes PTA or the community center might have activities for students depending on where they are at and what's going on that year. Sports and athletics. Now that's another biggie that schools provide. Again, the students who are staying after school for clubs can take the after-school bus, activity bus. The eligibility is that they need to be have a ASB membership card. Also, they most likely are going to pay a sports fee, cross-country, volleyball, softball, wrestling, basketball, soccer, and track of $50. The intramural volleyball, basketball, and soccer have a $20 fee. Sports physicals are required to participate in sports at ISD. I see someone has a question. If you give me about 6 minutes, I will be able to take questions once we get through some of these slides. We're almost done. Evaluations, as I talked about, one of the big ones is the evaluations and everything need to go through the sports registration site. So when you visit your child's school's website under athletics, you will see that there is something called final form, and you as a parent will create a login and you will upload your child's physical and fill out the form so that your child can participate in that sport. And all of that information is available on the athletics page for your child's school. So under the athletics page, you will see the online sports registration, which is the same kind of site for all ISD schools. So all of the middle schools use this site to manage their forms and the registration form and physicals that the children need to have completed. Parents need to have uploaded into the system for them to participate in the sport. Practices are usually held immediately after school, Mondays through Thursdays, not on Fridays. And games, after they've practiced for a certain period of time, they'll start playing games. Usually if a game is an away game, you will be expected to pick up your child from away games compared to games from games in general, because usually games are longer than when the after school bus will be taking them home. So just note, once your child is playing games, like in going to be competing with another school for those events, you will have to pick up your child from those the games. And one of the final slides, this is advice from parents from previous years. Understand that middle school is a transition years. They are learning how to be organized, develop good studying skills and personal skills. And that's a big one. Organization is overwhelming. Most of your sixth grade teachers will tell you that's one of the places that kids struggle the most with. And I'm going to tell you that Canvas, because everything is online, because there's less handling of paper, I think it has minimized and helped us keep kids a little bit more organized, but still kids struggle with organization. So, starting now, talk to your kids about organization strategies for their binder and how they organize their papers. Time management, when to go to the bathroom, when to go to the locker, the lost and found, talk to the counselor office. So counsel them, coach them, mentor them about some of these strategies they might need. If you and your child need support, who can they talk to for help? Who, the school counselor versus the classroom teacher, which one's best for the type of question they have. Check students' planners and teacher website frequently with your child in the sixth grade for the first few months. Help them learn how to open their locker. I bought my child a little lock so that she could just practice the right, left, or whatever, how to open a locker. Kids really haven't had to do that this past year for many of the schools because they haven't been reassigned their lockers due to COVID. But that, to me, that was really helpful, and my child really benefited from the fact that she practiced opening a locker in August. And then you have time in August. By the way, there's a back to school day in August where the kids can go to the school, check out their locker, do all of that stuff normally. So it depends on how we start the year and where we are with COVID at that time. Remember, there's no specific parent-teacher conference date. If you need to communicate with the teacher or a counselor, you have to initiate the contact. A parent asked how often can they initiate the contact. It's really going to be teacher dependent. So you can communicate with the teacher and talk to the teacher as to what you're asking, what questions you're asking, and then see where they are. Teachers have anywhere from 130 to 150 students in any given year. So just keep that in mind as you're asking for meetings with the teacher. But it depends on the teacher and what's going on. And honestly, it also depends on the need of your child on these for these meetings. So the event dates, I don't have all the dates. I do have Beaver Lake on the 16th and Pine Lake on the 15th. We're still getting some information. I believe Issaquah Middle just released their date, but once I get all these dates confirmed, when I send this PowerPoint to you as parents, I will be sure to have the dates in here. In addition, your child's middle school might be sending some of this information home, or the elementary schools might be starting to post this information later this week, but probably for sure when we come back from our February break. And if you have any questions, this is the wrong slide. but I'll have Liliana's information over here. But I will include the information for who to contact, my email, my telephone number, the liaison's contact information, so you can communicate with us and ask us any questions as needed. Highly capable program. Oh yeah, important one that was not in there earlier. Someone asked me in the registration form regarding any kind of social, or what does the school do to help incoming students with socializing, meeting other kids and so forth. At the end of October, traditionally, middle schools have done where everyone belongs. It's a web activity where the sixth graders come and the eighth graders kind of show them around, do activities with them. They do kind of a few social activities. I know we haven't done that last year because of COVID again, but hopefully that will happen. And the hope, and we're planning kind of that to have that happen as long as we're in compliance and that is allowed. But that is an amazing activity that happens in the end of August. I've been in my classroom supervising when the eighth graders kind of did these activities and games with the sixth graders, and all the sixth graders and the gym, and they're playing activities and talking, and they do, you know, more information like going through the buildings to help them be more familiar and comfortable. So the school does periodic activities to help that, because we do recognize as a school and as a district that this transition can be really hard, and we do as many things as we can to help kids feel like they belong and have a sense of community. The first couple of weeks of school, just so you know, the teachers move a much slower pace to make sure that the students are feeling very welcome, and we are answering all, you know, really helping support them as they transition to this here. At this time, I'm going to start by taking some questions that are in the chat right now. So one of the questions is, if your child is in a SciTech program, can he go to the school from the SciTech program if you're supposed to go to another school, another middle school? And the answer is no. Remember, your middle school will be based on your address. And so you will have to go to your home school. There is an ELL program in middle school, and that is their own class. As long as you're living within our attendance boundary, you are eligible to come to school. So if your child is, if you're not moving to the United States, or if you're in transition somehow, that is not a problem. As soon as your child is then living, your address is in a school boundary, you are then eligible to attend one of our middle schools. So if your child is not already in a highly capable program, as I said earlier, you can recommend him for the highly capable program. The recommendation is until September 15th. It's on the highly capable website. And so you can look at that and look for that information. One second. Let me just get out of here. So the highly capable program information is all on the website. And honestly, the easiest way to find information is click on the search. And once you get there, you will, highly capable is also looks like it's a frequently searched item. And so it talks about self-selection, selection and placement. You will get this information if your child is not already in the highly capable program, how you can, the selection process for 6th through 8th grade is also over here. You have to apply, turn in a form by, I believe it's September 15th is what I remember. So more information in the letter they sent on what it looks like at the middle school level is on here. Programs, where's my program site? Why can't I see this? Okay, program. And so it talks about what the program for highly capable looks like in middle school over here. And this is the letter they sent home to students in the program. So computer for the school I don't believe, Susan, do you know if they have specific specifications for a program?
I don't think we have had that this year, whether that may change, because there's certainly some issues around having a lot of different computers in the classroom. I would say stay tuned to that. I think there haven't been a lot of requirements, but I think that that will be at a school by school basis, and I wouldn't be surprised to see something around that this year.
Yes, so that has definitely been a concern, I'd say, for teachers more than anyone else, because helping teachers navigate computers that are different has been a challenge sometimes because certain computers have had limitations. So if you're looking at it, I would send me an email and I can see, because as some of you might know, we are going through a district tech levy at this time. And so this is going to be impactful on how computers, what's going on, because the teachers would have a preference that every student is assigned a laptop by the district to make it all the same, and it's much easier for them. But it totally depends on what's going on with the levy and a lot of different factors. So I cannot fully answer that question. I do know that some students are using Mac iBooks and iBook Air or whatever. Some are using Chromebooks, some are using Surfaces, some are using regular laptops. It's all over the place. So it has been a little bit challenging, mainly for the teachers and sometimes for students to access certain apps and everything. So it's, as long as your child can access Canvas and open all the apps on Canvas, I would think it's fine. But you can ask someone for more questions and I can help you direct to that. If you are transferring from a different school district, if you're already within our school district and attending an elementary school, then you will be able to enroll, sorry, not enroll. You can do your class selection with the elementary school that they'll be doing in March. Otherwise, I would contact the elementary and middle school and see what that process looks like, because you need to have that form for you to be doing that. Woo.
Okay, thank you,
8:19.
Lorna. Do you want
Yep.
to stop recording at this point?
Yes, I will do that. Thank you so much for reminding me.